In a dramatic escalation of the ongoing Ukraine-Russia conflict, Ukrainian officials recently voiced grave concerns over the implications of U.S. foreign policy under President Donald Trump, accusing the United States of undermining the established global order. Valerii Zaluzhnyi, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, articulated these sentiments during a recent conference at Chatham House, asserting that the US is not only failing to support Ukraine but is actively working to destabilize international norms by fostering ties with the Kremlin. The US is finally destroying this order, Zaluzhnyi declared, emphasizing that recent US overtures towards Russia threaten not just Ukraine but the entire rules-based international system. This assertion comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy participated in an emergency summit with EU leaders in Brussels, where he expressed gratitude for the continued support from European nations amid rising tensions. "During all this period, you stayed with us," Zelenskyy stated, highlighting the solidarity of the EU during what he described as a pivotal moment in the conflict. The summit also saw discussions around an ambitious ReArm Europe initiative proposed by EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, which aims to bolster European defense spending to €800 billion, thereby enhancing military capabilities across the continent. The backdrop to these discussions is a significant shift in U.S. military support for Ukraine. Following a contentious meeting with Zelenskyy, Trump announced a suspension of military aid and intelligence sharing actions, interpreted by many as a strategic move to compel Ukraine towards negotiations with Russia. "This is not an attempt to facilitate peace but a maneuver to push for Ukraine's surrender," remarked Sam Kiley, World Affairs editor, underscoring the severe ramifications this could have for Ukraine's defense efforts. With the U.S. intelligence support now paused, Ukrainian officials are concerned about the immediate impacts on their military operations, particularly in pinpointing Russian positions and defending against missile strikes. Compounding these challenges, Russia's ambassador to the UK has claimed that the UK is leading efforts to resist any potential peace deal, framing the situation as one where Western powers are obstructing a resolution. "The UK is at the head of those who are resisting a quick peace," Andrei Kellen stated, reflecting Moscow's frustration with NATO's continued military support for Ukraine. Meanwhile, discussions have emerged about a potential coalition of the willing spearheaded by the UK and France, which aims to deploy peacekeeping troops should a ceasefire be established. On the ground, the situation remains dire, with reports of continued Russian missile strikes affecting civilian infrastructure and exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. The Ukrainian government has reiterated its commitment to seeking peace, with Zelenskyy proposing a truce that includes halting attacks on civilian targets as a starting point for negotiations. "We are not only ready to take the necessary steps for peace, but we are also proposing those steps," he affirmed, emphasizing the need for a collaborative approach to end the conflict. As the geopolitical landscape continues to shift, the repercussions of Trump's foreign policy decisions are likely to reverberate across Europe and beyond, raising questions about the future trajectory of US-Ukraine relations and the broader implications for global security. The coming weeks will be crucial as Ukraine navigates this precarious moment, striving to maintain its sovereignty while seeking support from an increasingly divided international community. The urgency for a cohesive strategy to reinforce Ukraine's defenses and secure peace remains paramount. As leaders on both sides grapple with the consequences of their decisions in this protracted conflict. In a stark reminder of the ongoing turmoil in Ukraine, a recent Russian missile strike targeted Kryvyi, the hometown of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, resulting in the tragic loss of at least 2 lives and injuries to 28 others. This incident underscores the persistent threat posed by Russian aggression as Ukraine grapples with the repercussions of a nearly 3-year-long invasion. The strike occurred amidst a backdrop of significant political and military developments, particularly concerning the relationship between Ukraine and its Western allies. On March 6, 2025, leaders from the European Union convened in Brussels for an emergency summit where they discussed a substantial defense spending increase of €800 billion, approximately $844 billion. This meeting came on the heels of the United States suspending military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine, raising concerns about the country's ability to defend itself against ongoing Russian attacks. CIA Director William Burns confirmed the intelligence sharing pause, a move that has been criticized for potentially jeopardizing Ukraine's defensive capabilities, especially as Russian forces continue their offensive operations across multiple fronts. Zelenskyy, who attended the summit, expressed gratitude for the support from EU leaders, emphasizing the importance of unity in the face of Russian aggression. During all this period and last week you stayed with us, he stated, highlighting the solidarity that Ukraine needs as it confronts the challenges posed by the invasion. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen characterized the meeting as a watershed moment in Europe's defense strategy, reflecting a growing recognition that the continent must enhance its own security infrastructure. In light of the U.S. military aid suspension, French Defense Minister Sébastien Lecornu announced that France would offer its intelligence capabilities to Ukraine. This initiative aims to fill the void left by the U.S. withdrawal of support, showcasing the adaptability of European nations in response to the shifting geopolitical landscape. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump indicated that Zelenskyy is open to negotiations with Russia, even suggesting a deal concerning Ukraine's mineral resources. However, critics argue that these negotiations come at a time when Ukraine is in a vulnerable position, particularly following the intelligence sharing suspension. As the discussions unfold, the political landscape within Ukraine is also shifting. Opposition leaders, including former President Petro Poroshenko and Yulia Tymoshenko, have dismissed the idea of holding elections amid the ongoing conflict, asserting that such political activities are untenable while the country is under siege. This internal strife further complicates Ukraine's response to external pressures and highlights the challenges of governance during wartime. The Russian perspective remains combative, with officials asserting that the U.S. is undermining the global order by engaging with what they perceive as a confrontational approach from European leaders, particularly towards President Macron's recent comments about nuclear deterrence. Russian ambassador to the UK Andrei Kelin accused the UK of obstructing peace negotiations, suggesting that Western nations are prolonging the conflict instead of seeking a resolution. Looking ahead, the suspension of US military aid and intelligence sharing could embolden Russian forces to intensify their operations in Ukraine, potentially leading to further territorial gains. The Kremlin has indicated its intent to exploit this pause to maximize damage against Ukrainian forces, a strategy that may shift the dynamics of the conflict significantly. As Ukraine navigates these treacherous waters, the international community's response will be crucial. The European Union's commitment to increasing military support and Ukraine's willingness to negotiate under duress will shape the future of this conflict. The coming weeks will be critical as both sides assess their strategies and the international landscape evolves in response to the ongoing crisis. The resilience of the Ukrainian spirit, coupled with strategic support from allies, will be tested as the country continues to fight for its sovereignty in the face of relentless aggression. In a world where geopolitical tensions are escalating, the interplay between nations often unfolds in dramatic and unexpected ways. Recent developments surrounding the Ukraine-Russia conflict have highlighted a complex web of alliances, threats, and shifting policies that could shape the future of Europe and beyond. As the situation evolves, leaders from various nations are vocalizing their positions, revealing a landscape marked by both discord and attempts at unity. At the forefront of these tensions is the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, which has prompted strong reactions from global leaders. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy recently attended an emergency summit with European Union leaders in Brussels, where he expressed gratitude for their unwavering support, stating, "During all this period, you stayed with us. We are very thankful that we are not alone." This sentiment is particularly poignant as Ukraine faces mounting pressures, including a notable shift in U.S. foreign policy under President Donald Trump, who has been accused of undermining the rules-based international order by fostering closer ties with Russia. Valerii Zaluzhnyi, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, articulated this concern during a conference at the Chatham House think tank, stating, "The U.S. is finally destroying this order," highlighting the damaging impact of Trump's approach on international alliances. Trump's administration has suggested a potential suspension of military aid to Ukraine, a move that has drawn criticism for potentially forcing Ukraine into a position of surrender rather than fostering a pathway to peace. As these developments unfold, the Kremlin has not remained silent. Russian officials have responded with accusations aimed at European leaders, particularly targeting French President Emmanuel Macron. Following Macron's assertion that Russia poses a grave menace to Europe, the Russian Foreign Ministry labeled his remarks as nuclear blackmail, asserting that such rhetoric only exacerbates tensions. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov condemned the French president's comments, suggesting they echo historical confrontations with figures like Napoleon and Hitler. While dismissing European proposals for peacekeeping forces in Ukraine as provocative. In parallel, Macron's ambitious proposal to extend France's nuclear deterrent to European allies is indicative of a broader strategy to bolster collective defense in the absence of reliable American support. This move, coupled with the establishment of a coalition of the willing led by UK officials to deploy peacekeeping troops in Ukraine, underscores the urgency of addressing security concerns amidst the conflict. Interestingly, while European leaders are rallying around Ukraine, there is also a palpable sense of caution. For instance, Ireland's Taoiseach Michael Martin has expressed a willingness to participate in peacekeeping operations but explicitly stated that Ireland would not engage in any deterrent force, reflecting a nuanced approach to military involvement. As the potential for renewed conflict looms, the challenges facing Ukraine are compounded by the complexities of international diplomacy. Former U.S. officials have voiced concerns over Trump's approach, suggesting that his insistence on a peace deal could effectively amount to capitulation. This sentiment is echoed by analysts who argue that pressing Ukraine to make concessions may only embolden Russia in the long run, perpetuating instability in the region. The unfolding narrative of the Ukraine-Russia war, intertwined with the shifting dynamics of U.S. foreign policy and European defense strategies, paints a picture of a world grappling with the consequences of power plays. The stakes are high, as the actions of today will undoubtedly influence the geopolitical landscape of tomorrow. As nations navigate these treacherous waters, the potential for both conflict and cooperation remains ever present, calling for astute leadership and decisive action. Looking ahead, the international community must remain vigilant and committed to finding sustainable solutions that prioritize peace and stability rather than succumbing to the pressures of aggression and division. The path to resolution will require not only diplomatic finesse but also a collective acknowledgement of the lessons learned from past conflicts, ensuring that the sacrifices made by nations like Ukraine are not in vain. In a dramatic turn of events, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has expressed his willingness to work collaboratively with President Donald Trump to negotiate a peace deal with Russia, following a heated confrontation in the Oval Office that has left diplomatic relations between the two nations tense. This pledge comes after the Trump administration announced it would halt military aid to Ukraine, a move that has profoundly impacted Kyiv's capacity to defend itself against Russian aggression. Zelenskyy took to social media to emphasize the urgency of reconciliation, stating, "It is time to make things right." He acknowledged the historical support the U.S. has provided to Ukraine amidst its ongoing struggle against Russian forces. "None of us wants an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts," he added, reflecting on what he termed a regrettable encounter with Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. The tension escalated during their meeting when discussions about a minerals agreement aimed at fortifying Ukraine's economic interests against future Russian threats broke down into a shouting match. Zelenskyy left the White House without signing the agreement, which would have been pivotal in securing U.S. support for Ukraine's post-war recovery. Trump, frustrated with the confrontation, suggested he would not engage with Zelenskyy again unless the Ukrainian leader was prepared to discuss peace terms that aligned with his administration's expectations. This impasse has placed Zelenskyy in a precarious political position, as Trump's allies have hinted that he should either apologize for the altercation or resign. House Speaker Mike Johnson was quoted stating either he needs to come to his senses and come back to the table in gratitude or someone else needs to lead the country to do that. This pressure has intensified following the suspension of U.S. military aid, which serves as a significant leverage point for Trump to compel Ukraine into rapid negotiations. In response to the evolving situation, European leaders convened an emergency summit to discuss increased support for Ukraine amidst concerns over the U.S.'s diminishing role. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen highlighted the gravity of the threat posed by Russia, stressing the necessity for Europe to bolster its defense capabilities independently. A proposed ReArm Europe initiative aims to allocate approximately €800 billion $860 billion towards enhancing military readiness across the continent, reflecting a shift in how European nations may need to operate in light of potential U.S. disengagement. Simultaneously, back-channel discussions have emerged between senior Trump allies and political opponents of Zelenskyy in Ukraine, including former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. These talks are reportedly exploring the feasibility of expedited presidential elections, a move that could destabilize Zelenskyy's hold on power. Critics within Ukraine warn that such elections might play to Russia's advantage, as a significant portion of the electorate is currently engaged in the conflict or residing abroad as refugees. Zelenskyy remains resolute in his leadership, recently asserting his confidence in winning any forthcoming elections despite the tumult surrounding his presidency. However, the shifting political landscape, coupled with increasing calls from Trump's camp for concessions from Ukraine, underscores a precarious moment for the Ukrainian government. As the situation develops, the potential for a ceasefire and renewed negotiations looms on the horizon. Zelenskyy has indicated that any agreement could involve the release of prisoners and restrictions on military operations, signaling a willingness to explore diplomatic avenues under intense pressure. The ramifications of these diplomatic maneuvers will undoubtedly shape the future of Ukraine's sovereignty and its relationship with both the U.S. and Russia. In conclusion, the unfolding dynamics between Trump and Zelenskyy represent a critical juncture not only for Ukraine but also for international relations in a volatile geopolitical landscape. As European leaders rally to support Ukraine in the face of American uncertainty, the next steps taken by both Zelenskyy and Trump will be pivotal in determining the course of peace efforts and the stability of the region. The world watches closely as the implications of this power struggle resonate far beyond the immediate conflict, shaping the future of international diplomacy and security.